Hello there, good evening. Welcome to Look North, our top story tonight. Fears over crumbling concrete means schools have to move pupils out of unsafe areas, and one school remains closed with pupils facing a return to online lessons.
The fact that this is the generation that was disrupted by COVID, it's quite tragic really for them to have another disruption, for there to be another thing that holds them back.
Also tonight, the West Yorkshire railway station that has more cancelled trains than any other in Britain. Former Leeds Rhinos player Rob Burrow and his family shared their hopes and fears for the future with the family of another sporting star living with motor neurone disease. The 12-year-old go-karter from North Yorkshire who's starring in a new documentary following the next generation of young drivers.
And I have the news that we've all been waiting for. It's going to be a fine week, fine, settled and with plenty of sunshine for most of us. It is also going to be very warm. I'll be back at the end of the programme with all the details on that.
Hello, thanks for your company this evening. It is back to school for many this week, but one Scarborough school has said it's concerned about the impact on pupils after it's been forced to stay closed due to unsafe concrete. Scalby School is among a handful in our region known to contain reinforced autoclaved aerated concrete, also known as RAC. Now, its management is asking the government whether allowances will be made for this year's GCSE students who are missing the start of their academic year. Meanwhile, another affected school in our region are opening this week, but with pupils moved out of the unsafe areas. Abagiola has more.
There'll be no lessons at Scalby School in Scarborough this week because around 2/3 of the school site contains RAC and has to be taken out of use. Jasmine is in Year 9.
They've had support beams up for a while, holding the school up, and they just told us that it's a few areas. It is a bit scary now, knowing that some things might collapse, and it would be scary if it did collapse on us.
Parents have been told it will reopen next Monday, but some pupils will not return to classrooms and may have to be taught in other schools or will face home learning, just like they did in lockdown. The trust that runs the school is concerned about the impact on pupils' education.
We have asked the DfE for some clarification about what this particular process will mean for our GCSE students, whether allowances will be made to take into consideration that they've not been able to benefit at the start of this year from the education that we expected them to have. So that's an ongoing conversation that we'll have with the DfE until we get more clarity on that.
RAC is short for reinforced autoclaved aerated concrete. It was used in building between the 1960s and 1980s. It's weaker than standard concrete and only has a lifespan of around 30 years. The fear is that it can fail and cause buildings to collapse. The government say 156 schools are affected, but they haven't said exactly where those schools are, with that information expected to be released later this week. We know of 4 in Yorkshire. This school, Cross Flats in Bingley, is one of 2 in the local area that have had to take urgent action. The school is still open, but lessons are taking place in other parts of the building.
I think the kids, it's important that they stay in the school and get educated in the safe parts of the building.
Not great for the kids, especially after COVID and all that disruption from both things, but this school will make the best of it, I suppose.
They've already been through COVID and they've just got back into a routine, and it's a big upheaval for them again, having to be taught in a school hall. But the government should have acted sooner on it, really.
RAC has also been found in the kitchens of Abbey Lane School in Sheffield, so alternative lunch arrangements have been made. Today, a former civil servant said the government halved the budget for school repairs back in 2021, when Prime Minister Rishi Sunak was Chancellor. But he says he's not to blame for the current crisis.
That is completely and utterly wrong. Actually, one of the first things I did as Chancellor in my first spending review in 2020 was to announce a new 10-year school rebuilding programme for 500 schools. Now, that equates to about 50 schools a year that will be refurbished or rebuilt. And if you look at what we've been doing over the previous decade, that's completely in line with what we've always done, about 50 or so schools a year refurbished or rebuilt. That's what I announced as Chancellor in my first spending review.
The Bingley schools affected are in the constituency of MP Philip Davies. He's praised local schools for their swift reaction, but says governments need to change their approach.
All governments of any persuasion to start thinking longer term and build things as things used to be built in the Victorian times to last, rather than just saying, oh, we don't care, it'll be for a future government to sort this out. We can't allow that to happen. It's a false economy.
While the political row continues, parents just want to know that their children are safe in school. Abby Jaola, BBC Look North, Bingley.
Now, we've heard from a fifth school in our region this afternoon that's found wreck in one of its buildings. The BBC has seen a letter from parents at Wilco Academy in Tingley. It says safety measures have already been put in place and there'll be no delay to the start of the academic year. And if your school that your children go to is affected, do get in touch, let us know. Our email address is look.north@bbc.co.uk. Next tonight, a West Yorkshire railway station has had more trains cancelled this year than anywhere else in Britain. BBC analysis of the National Rail data shows Huddersfield had more than 5,000 trains cancelled by the end of July. The data also shows that fewer than half of trains arrived on time in Yorkshire during that period, making it the worst performing of any region in England. Our transport correspondent Spencer Stokes reports.
One of the finest station buildings in the country, but beyond the grand facade, a train service that is far less impressive. Huddersfield takes pole position in the league table of cancelled trains. 5,500 services dropped from the timetable over the last year. That's 13% in total. Kevin Rolls commutes to Leeds University from Meltham on the edge of Huddersfield. Making sure he's at work on time involves a 6 a.m. start.
If we go back 7 or 8 years ago, the journey from my house to the university would typically take about an hour, perhaps a little more than an hour coming home. But now, occasionally I can match those times, but mostly we're talking about 2 or 3 hours.
Back at Huddersfield, passengers aren't surprised by today's figures.
Regular cancellations, lots of delays, constant delays all the time. Yeah, I mean, I don't travel often, but when I do, it's pretty bad. A lot of the times, conditions on the train are really crowded.
I've checked my train app about 10 times already today, just to make sure that I can get to Leeds to meet my friend at the time that I thought at the time I'd arranged to meet her. Yeah. But it's still a little bit nerve-wracking. I still don't trust it entirely.
2 train companies run services from Huddersfield, TransPennine Express and Northern, and historically both have below average performance figures. Now throw in the industrial unrest of the last year and the fact that much of the route is being upgraded, and you start to see why this station has topped that cancellation league table. Even when trains aren't cancelled, many failed to run on time. Across Yorkshire, 58% were delayed, another table-topping figure. TransPennine was taken over by the government in May, and the company says performance is improving, with cancellations falling on days when there's no industrial action. But unions argue there's still a long way to go.
What we're seeing in reality is a service that's not returned to levels of pre-COVID, but what we have seen is the footfall. Everybody knows the trains are busy. You know, we're in a period where they're running trains that are short and shorter sets that are not capable of carrying the number of people that want to travel. We've seen a dramatic increase in leisure travel at weekends since COVID, and they're just not equipped to deal with that situation.
Next year we'll see Huddersfield Station close for a number of weeks as part of the TransPennine upgrade. Passengers hope the investment will deliver a train service that's a match for the grand building. Spencer Stokes, BBC Look North, Huddersfield.
Some very sad news to tell you about now. A woman and 2 children have died in a crash involving 2 cars and a bus in North Yorkshire. It happened yesterday afternoon. Michelle Lyons reports.
It was on this stretch of the A61 yesterday afternoon that the fatal collision occurred. It happened around 2:20 in the afternoon between South Stanley and Ripon. Now, the collision involved a silver Vauxhall Mariva, a blue Toyota Aygo and a double-decker bus. Now, the two cars were travelling south towards Ripley when the accident occurred, and the double-decker bus was travelling in the opposite direction. Sadly, all three occupants of the Vauxhall died. They were a 30-year-old woman, a teenage girl and a 6-year-old boy. Now, police have informed their next of kin, and specialist trained officers are with the family. Now, the driver of the bus did sustain leg injuries and was taken to hospital, and a number of passengers also went to hospital with minor injuries. The two people who were in the Toyota were unhurt. Now, police are appealing for witnesses, especially anyone with dashcam footage who could help them with their inquiries. It's the second fatal accident to have occurred on the A61 near South Stanley in as many weeks. A 59-year-old motorcyclist died near here a week last Saturday. Police are investigating both incidents.
Michelle Lyons reporting there. An update from the world of politics now, and the new Labour MP for Selby and Ainsty, Keir Mather, has taken his seat in the House of Commons for the first time.
I swear by Almighty God that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles, his heirs and successors.
Aged just 25, he becomes the youngest MP in the Commons after overturning a Conservative majority of more than 20,000 in July's by-election. Keir Mather took the formal oath as MPs returned from their summer recess. Meanwhile, the Leeds Central MP Hilary Benn has been named as Shadow Northern Ireland Secretary in the Labour reshuffle. The Leeds Central MP has held several frontbench roles before, but not sat in the Shadow Cabinet since being sacked by Jeremy Corbyn for rebelling against his leadership. Hundreds of staff at a Worksop-based retailer, Wilco, have lost their jobs today after the company went into administration. Now, it seems unlikely that a buyer will be found for the whole company, but it is hoped a deal can be struck to save some of the 400 shops and more than 12,500 staff across the country. Simon Ward has this report.
It's been the last day at work for some staff here. 269 people have lost their jobs at the head office at Wilco in Worksop. More redundancies are expected to be announced in the distribution side of the business. Wilco went into administration last month, and the administrators say there's no viable bid to buy the whole company. Business leaders say the government should help.
What we'd now call upon, if there are going to be job losses, is for the government to create a task force to get these people back into work right across the UK as quickly as possible.
It's been widely reported that as profits tumbled at Wilco in recent years, they continued to pay out to shareholders. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's a private business, and it's up to the directors and shareholders of the business what to do. I think it's important that any business should focus on cash in the business, not just the profits and the dividends. The cash is the key thing for most businesses.
In Worksop, people are worried about the effect on the town and people in the area.
Obviously, it's a lot of people that are being made redundant, so it's a real shame.
The cost of living and everything else, it's just a big thing to happen.
How could a company that size get in that position? That's what I want to know. I'd like to know. How could it get into this position?
They need their jobs. It's not a wealthy area, is it?
The homewares company Dunelm, based at Syston in Leicestershire, says it will guarantee job interviews to all former Wilco staff who apply for a position. And Bassett Law District Council is encouraging other employers in this area to offer positions to former Wilco staff. Canadian billionaire businessman Doug Putman is in talks to buy some of Wilco, and if a deal goes through, some shops and staff jobs could be saved. Simon Ward, BBC Look North, Worksop.
Rob Burrow now and his family, because they've been sharing their hopes and fears for the future with another sporting star who's been diagnosed with motor neurone disease too. Rob needs 24-hour care, while the former rugby union player Ed Slater is starting to lose function in his arms and legs. It doesn't just affect them though, does it? It affects their whole families too, especially their wives, who are taking on the role of carers as well as mums and wives too. Graham Satchell has this story.
Two rugby families, both living with the devastating condition motor neurone disease. Rob Burrow, a rugby league legend, was diagnosed when he was 37. Ed Slater, a rugby union star, was told he had MND last year when he was just 34. the two families have been supporting each other in the hardest of times.
You know, I was devastated when I heard the news that Ed had been diagnosed. As Rob said so many times, it doesn't just affect the person, it affects the whole family, and essentially you become a carer, you know, as well as a mum and a wife, and, you know, juggling sort of everything. It's
juggling all the different things. Yeah, seeing what you guys have achieved and what you've kind of done with the kids, I think for me it was so reassuring and also helpful to see you guys doing what you're doing with the 3 kids.
I think as a parent, you just want your children to be happy, don't you? And you kind of, you know, I know kind of what's coming, and it's really difficult to kind of prepare them, and how long's Daddy got, what does that mean? And it's really difficult to have those conversations with, you know, with your children.
Yeah, so I think that's actually the hardest thing, is you can't give them an answer, and kids do love to know, like, a factual answer, or what does that actually mean?
Hi there, Joe and kids. It is great to see you all. How are you doing?
Rob is showing Ed his eye gaze machine, which helps him to talk. It's something Ed himself may need in the future.
And it basically works on infrared, so there's a little light that Rob looks at the letters. This is where Rob will get mad at me because I press all the wrong buttons.
Hear that, Joe?
I've got no hope.
I am so grateful for everything that Lindsay does for me. I couldn't wish for a better wife and mother to our children. Without her, I wouldn't be here today. I just hope she knows that I do the same for her.
There's not enough words I could use to describe my mum, how special she is. She's the best mum in the entire world. She's a great mum because she's got a few of us to look after.
With the help of the rugby community, both men have put MND on the map and raised millions of pounds to find a cure.
You know, life is for living, and I think we've got to keep that hope and positivity and keep fighting. You know, M&D might win the battle, but we'll keep fighting and we'll keep banging that drum and, you know, do all we can.
Definitely.
Lindsay and Joe are such strong women, aren't they? So inspiring. A BBC Breakfast documentary following Rob, Lindsay and their children's journey, Rob Burrow Living with MND, has actually made it to the final shortlist in tomorrow night's National Television Awards. You can still vote for them, by the way, visiting the website nationaltvawards.com. Voting closes at midday tomorrow. We have got everything crossed for you, Lindsay and Rob. Finally tonight, a 12-year-old boy from North Yorkshire is featuring in a new documentary about the rising stars of the go-karting world. Stanley Clark only had his first full-year race in karts last year, but now he's preparing for the British Kart Championships, as well as appearing on our screens in the Amazon Prime show Driven Dreams. He and his mum Wendy joined us in the studio earlier. Before that, let's hear from a little flavour of the documentary.
Nerve-wracking and also very exciting.
The entire family has to support this to get to the level that he's at.
If you fear of crashing, there's no point in doing it.
Oh, Stanley, it all looks very tense. My heart's in my mouth. How do you feel before you go on that racetrack?
Well, I feel quite good. I'm looking forward to it, always excited, but also adrenaline pumping through my veins.
Now tell me, how did you get into racing? Because you're not from a motorsports background, are you?
No, I'm not. I basically just started from a birthday party, my 9th birthday party in October 2019. I had a karting party with some of my old mates, and I seemed to not be too bad at it, and I was pretty good. And then we just carried on going to that indoor circuit in York, and we enjoyed doing that for a couple of months. Then we bought our own kart in mid-2020 and practised at our local outdoor circuit, Tockwith.
And it's just grown from there, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Wendy, this isn't a cheap sport, is it? It's not like buying some goalie gloves and a football.
Oh, no. If only. My bank balance would be a lot healthier, that's for sure.
And how far do you think Stanley can go with this?
In this sport, you go as far as your bank balance goes. It's quite brutal. It's not just down to talent. It is about how far the money goes. So mine's not going to last forever. I'm self-employed. I'm a single mum. It's all down to me, and my dad as well. My dad's in his 70s, and we both work to pay for Stan's sport.
And how do you feel when you see him going on that racetrack? Because they're going way over 70 miles an hour, aren't they, on these tiny
Absolutely.
cars?
Yeah, and they're like a centimetre off the floor. In fact, sometimes, you know, the seat's touching the floor when they go over the high curbs and things.
Not only have you been racing, but you've also had the cameras following you as well for this Amazon Prime documentary. What was that like?
That was really enjoyable to do, to be fair, yeah. I really enjoyed the whole experience about learning how to be on TV and being on TV at the same time.
Stanley, what do you love about racing?
Every aspect of it, yeah. Every single thing.
Well, you can't say more than that, can you, Wendy? Best of luck. I know you've got a big race coming up at the weekend, haven't you?
Yeah.
Very briefly tell us about that.
So that is a round of the European Championships at Paul Fletcher International in Lincolnshire.
Wow, we've got everything crossed for you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Cool as a cucumber on TV and on the racetrack as well. Now, most of us who aren't in a TV studio are enjoying the beautiful sunny weather, hopefully this week, but it may have confused some of our flora and fauna. Take a look at these sunflowers on Westfield Farm at Sutton-on-the-Forest near York. They were happily soaking up the warm September weather today. Visitors can follow footpaths through hundreds of thousands of sunflowers, some towering 7 to 8 feet high. After a very wet July and a really dull August, the sunflowers may have thought their season was over. However, a number of specimens have burst into life. They're beautiful, aren't they?
So we've got another flush of sunflowers coming through now. So this week is going to be full of sunshine, so the sunflowers are going to be loving it. So yeah, this week will be a good week for the sunflowers.
What a lovely place to go. I tell you what, Keeley, it's sod's law, isn't it? Always happens. Kids go back to school and it's the best weather we've had all summer.
Absolutely. You could write the forecast by. We should listen to that, shouldn't we? Yeah. And it is going to be a good one this week. So there's lots of talk about us having a heat wave. Will we have a heat wave, and what exactly is a heat wave? Well, there's a definition from the Met Office, and a heat wave is when we reach or exceed a certain temperature for at least 3 consecutive days. And that certain temperature is called a heat wave threshold. Now, it's different all over the country, as you can see from these graphics here. It's 25 degrees for North and West Yorkshire, and it's 26 degrees for South Yorkshire. And it does look likely that we are going to reach that criteria. So there'll be plenty of opportunity for you to get out and about, for you to take lots of pictures in the sunshine. You can keep posting them on the Weather Watchers page or on social media as well. So yes, high pressure means there's a lot of settled weather and very warm weather as we go through this week. That's not to say that some of the mornings won't be a bit dull. So tomorrow, some of us will start off on a grey note, but it'll brighten up. There'll be plenty of warm sunshine through tomorrow. So high pressure dominates right the way through the week. It looks very warm through the week, but then through the weekend as well. Then next week, we're looking at a breakdown and a more westerly flow, which means more changeable and more unsettled weather as well. So this is the satellite picture from earlier. Barely a cloud in the sky. We reached over 27 degrees, 28 degrees in Sheffield this afternoon. And it's fine out there at the moment. Long clear spells overnight, but that will encourage a little bit of patchy mist, fog and low cloud to develop, particularly in prone spots, for example, down the Vale of York, the Vale of Pickering. Temperatures overnight dropping back to around 12 or 13 degrees. I think towards the end of the week and from about midweek onwards, the nights will become a bit more warm and humid as well. So let's have a little look at those high water times, around 8:15 in Whitby and 8:25 in Scarborough. So we'll start the day with some of that low cloud mist and fog. That will lift quite readily, and then we're looking at another lovely day. Plenty of sunshine through tomorrow. We've got a little bit more of an east-southeasterly breeze, so perhaps we won't reach the dizzy heights of 28 degrees, although I think for West and South Yorkshire it still will be a very warm day. We could be a little bit higher than this, but it will always feel a little bit fresher along the coast. Into Wednesday, I think a bank of extensive cloud will develop overnight. It may just be that the Pennines and the Dales stick out above it. Elsewhere, there'll be a lot of cloud to start the day on Wednesday, but it should burn back to the coast. It may just be that a few mist patches remain along the coast on Wednesday. Otherwise, it's another fine, warm and sunny day. There could be the odd shower to greet us, particularly in the west and north on Thursday. Also some low cloud and mist. That will burn away. Plenty of sunshine. As you can see, lovely warm temperatures for the rest of the week.
Feeling hot, hot, hot. Thank you, Keeley. Well, if you love the sunshine, enjoy it. If you're not a fan, don't worry. It looks like it'll all be over very soon. That's it from us. Phil Bodmer will be here with your late news at 10:30 this evening. But from all of us here, have a good evening. Bye-bye for now.